So I just got 5 minutes just today. I was not aware that I was on the agenda. So I just made some slides very quickly. I'm Kenji. I'm a product manager on Chrome. I work on different things, and in particular DNS over HTTPS. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, I can do that. So I'm just going to talk about the roadmap because I think this is what is interesting to most of you. So in 79, which is the current stable, we launched an experiment that is only enabled for a subset of our users, in which we do something called auto-upgrade. So as you can see on the right side, there's like a list of IP address and a list of URLs. So when a user is already using one of the DNS services that exists in our table, we simply upgrade them to the DNS over HTTPS service of the same provider. So when we say auto-upgrade, it's just that we keep the same provider and we just upgrade those users to the better version, which is DoH. And we reach out to the different partners to make sure that the service that they offer on their regular DNS is the same that they offer on their encrypted version, so that there is no change in terms of user experience. So that's what we did in 79. And so because it's already in stable channel, we are getting some data. And so we can start talking about what we've seen so far. And the things we were looking into were essentially how often we were able to upgrade users, what is the stability, the performance, and the correctness of that feature. And so, like worldwide reveal, unfortunately, there is no much data yet. So I can't say anything. But because this is like a special occasion, we can still talk a little bit like just early takes, right? So the one thing we saw is that in terms of successful upgrade, there is some room for improvement. It's not bad, but there is still a lot of cases where we could upgrade users and we didn't. And we found the reason for that, and so the next version of Chrome is going to to do better on that. For the other aspect, the thing that happened is that we launched this experiment just before the holidays, and so the usage pattern that we got are very different, and so there is no conclusion to be reached. It's still like roughly neutral, but there is no significance level in anywhere. And so we need a few more weeks to be able to know for sure that the data is saying this is fine. So maybe in a few weeks from now. All right, so crossing fingers, knocking on wood, or going there. Apparently that's the thing, maybe I should go there. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but apparently if you go touch this like knight made of wood, good luck happen. So hoping that the experiment goes well, our plan is to launch this feature eventually, and the plan is to launch it in Chrome 81, which is going to be the stable release around mid-March. So there's still time to fix things and improve things. So our plan is to launch this auto-upgrade behavior and add a few more things. Well, actually, most of the things were already in place, but we are just like making sure that they work. And so I'm going to go over them. So auto-upgrade is the same behavior I explained just before. We might have more people in the table, but same behavior. For pattern control, what we do is we use the OS provided APIs to detect whether or not pattern control is enabled. And if it is, then we lock down the feature and all the settings that are associated with it so that children can't mess up with it. Policies for administrator, essentially we want to have two things. One is to enable and disable the feature. If you are an IT admin, enterprise education, we'll provide you with ways to turn off the feature and also to configure it to a provider that you want to use. It could be an internal, external provider, doesn't really matter. And finally, we want to provide user choice and control, and so there will be a setting that people can use. The default of that setting is going to be the auto-upgrade behavior that I explained just before, and it'll be ways for users to choose a specific provider, whether it's like among a list of predefined options or a manually inputted one. And the last thing we have is we made an announcement about a tentative proposal for a process and requirements for DNS providers to be in the different options that we have. Essentially, it's roughly about spec compliance, transparency, and there is a bit about technical eligibility. And there are like things that have yet to be resolved, like in terms of discovery, but this is what we have at the moment. And And so there is a lot of details, but I just want to focus on one thing, the transparency one, especially this one. When we say transparency about filtering, we're not interested in like the list of URLs that you have to filter, because we know that some of them are by nature like not something you can talk about. It's more about the categories of things that you are filtering. Is it like just like child sexual abuse imagery? Is there more categories than that? So just listing those things and the privacy policy is the thing that we would like to see. Yeah, and so if you want to learn more details about that, you can go to that URL and there is a link to the doc. And with that, I'm done. So I don't know if there is room for questions or not, but.
Thank you. Any questions?
Hi, Kenji. Thanks for the update. Just
can you say who you are for the webcast, please?
Sorry, Andy Fiddler, BT. 2 questions. The first one is, am I right to understand you're not going to do a canary domain to detect DNS-based parental controls or ISP content filtering? Because I'm just wondering, because that will bypass quite a bit of the UK's
The way we
control.
Understand the canary domain is that it was introduced by Mozilla because they have a very different deployment model that we have. They are changing the provider whereas we don't. We just look at whatever the user is currently using and we upgrade them to the better version of the protocol. And so from our viewpoint, we don't see the need for a canary domain. And even Mozilla said that they know that the canary domain can be abused, and so it doesn't feel like it's a long-term solution. And so we'd rather focus our energy on things that are for the long term and things that we can trust. Like the canary domain is not a signal that we can trust. And so we don't see the urge of doing one, and so we'd rather spend our time working on like longer-term solutions.
Great, thanks. On the second question is, do you have any thoughts on solutions on how you can do auto-discovery, same provider upgrade, for people like us who use private IP addresses?
So it's a very complex problem, so I don't have an answer. And so my request to all of you would be to document all the options that are on the table from your point of view. And then we'll have the different teams of browsers and OS vendors to look at them and tell, okay, we could go with that one because X, Y, Z, but this one doesn't work for us because whatever, right? There are reasons why we don't want to do things, and there are reasons why you don't want to do things. And so having a list of options that we can go through would be useful.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Kenji.
Thank you.